Remember, here on Live Now from Fox, we show you these live events, the press conferences that happen and pop up about the information you need to know about how the containment efforts are going with these fires, the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire. We do have a Palisades fire update that's happening virtually now with fire officials there in LA County. This is happening, I believe, on YouTube and on Twitter. So we want to take that live. Let's keep listening.
Good evening, everybody. Today in the city side, let's stay with the city side right now, of Los Angeles, the Palisades area and surrounding areas, we worked really hard to extinguish the fire and then prepare for this upcoming windstorm, which kind of goes hand in hand. And then lastly, we prepared for potential repopulation. Now, understanding with the repopulation coming up in some time, there's some things that we have to do, and let me explain what those might be. We have to ensure the safety of the general public, but ensure the safety of you. That means removing major hazards, down trees, wires, gas lines, and all those things that could cause damage. Two, we're creating a coordinated effort, grid systems by streets, blocks, and that takes a little bit of time to do that. And simultaneously, the last thing is we're figuring out what the other needs are for the public. DAFN needs, function, disability needs, and then going in there and seeing what kind of hazmat problems there are and figuring out how we're going to mitigate that prior to allowing people to go in. So all those things are kind of working simultaneously while we're out there working to prepare for this next storm. But believe me, it's our top priority to get you back in there to see your homes. So as I progress in these nightly meetings, I will give you more updated information as it relates to what I'm talking about.
Next up, LAPD.
Good evening, everyone. As Chief Everett just briefed, the evacuation orders have remained in place, and we're working very closely with our fire and utilities partners to determine when we can safely reopen the evacuation area. So the mandatory evacuation orders remain in place. We have also continued to suspend our medication escorts until further notice. However, we do have some news to report to you. If you are looking for an animal that was left behind, you may call and coordinate with the LA Department of Regulation, and I will put out a number, so prepare to copy. Community members who have a missing pet that they left behind may call to do a check at 888-452-7381. LAPD officers are performing increased patrols in the area. Over the last 24 hours, we've deployed over 600 officers over the last 24 hours. We have been supplemented by officers from LAX Airport Police, as well as California Army Reserve National Guardsmen. We've deployed over 200 California Army National Guardsmen to supplement our traffic control points and appreciate their assistance. At this time, we also stood up a 24/7 manned missing persons report hotline. So far, we have received over 28 reported missing persons. 17 of those 28 persons who reported missing have been found and are safe. If you have a missing person to report, you may call our 24/7 hour hotline at 213-996-1800. That concludes my brief.
Next up, Los Angeles County Sheriffs.
Good evening. I'm Lieutenant Mike Marion from IMT 2B, the overnight shift here at Zuma Beach Command Post. I'll be briefing on our half of the fire with our partners, LAPD. Thank you for your brief. My numbers are for the A side, so he did a 24-hour, so you can pretty much double my numbers because I did the prior 12 hours, but he gave the 24 hours. For A shift, we had 129 sheriffs. That includes the command post, staging, and all the forward deployed units on missions locking down the area. CHP has an additional 12 officers, and we're also augmented by 9 National Guard soldiers and their vehicles. The sheriff is manning 10 closure locations. CHP has an additional 2 closure locations, and the National Guard is on 4 posts. We have no changes in our lockdown hard closures. It's the same as yesterday. We have increased our looting patrols, looting suppression, and flock safety has also donated some ALPR cameras. We've augmented our cameras to one of our contract city areas, and there's a lot of other augments going on. Search and rescue, we are, the sheriff is standing up squads to aid search and rescue in a phased approach as briefed by LA City Fire. And again, the safety is the primary concern on that. Other than that, that's all we have for LA County Sheriff. Any questions?
Next up, Los Angeles County Fire.
Good evening, Brian Martin, Los Angeles County Fire Department Deputy IC. Thank you to Operations for the overview of the incident. Today is a critical day as we face the 3 days of the wind, and we finalize the fire, and we move into that recovery process. We thank you for your cooperation and your patience. We know this community is resilient. We have been through incidents many times, and we really want to thank you for your cooperation and trust. As to echo what Chief Everett has stated, we have begun those conversations of what it takes to get you back into your homes. However, we just keep asking you to remain patient. This is going to take time. We need to do this right, and we need to make sure that everyone is safe to get back into their homes. There's many things out there that we need to mitigate the roads, power lines, emergency traffic needs to be able to move in and out, as well as the public. So there's a lot of things that we need to finalize before we do that. And we continue to just ask for your patience and trust. And we really appreciate your collaboration and support. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the formal presentation portion. Now we'll move into the question and answer portion. So we've been writing down questions in-house, passing it to the most appropriate person to answer it. And again, we're going to do our best to answer as many as possible. If we don't get to your question, though, please know that we're going to work hard to get you that answer either through social media or through tomorrow night's meeting.
All right, good evening again. My name is Landon Hack. I'm one of the operations section chiefs with the incident. I work for CAL FIRE. First question I got here is, what is mopping up? So mopping up is a process of cooling off hot material throughout the fire perimeter inside where it has burned. That can be anything from ash left from brush, root systems, basically any material that burned that is still remains hot along the fire's edge and then further interior. When it comes to structures that's debris left, metal comes down, covers the ground, holds heat underneath it. So mopping up is the process of turning that material around, applying water, grubbing it out with tools, and cooling it off to make sure that no embers can come out of that and cross the line and ignite further fire, be it a structure or more vegetation. What is containment? So containment for us, we put on here, we utilize the black line to represent that on the map. And that is area that we have very, very, very high confidence that all the mop-up has been done, and there is extremely to no potential for the fire to come out of that area again. And then it's usually represented in a percentage when it's talked about. Another one is what is handline construction. So handline construction is, we use hand crews for that, for the most part. Engine companies also do handline construction when need be, but they're the ones that are carrying the hose and the water, so that's typically the work that they do. But handline construction is a process utilizing hand tools. Some tools cut, some tools grub, and some tools basically rake in conjunction with chainsaws that cut the brush and materials of trees and that kind of stuff. And it's a process of taking the unburned material down to bare dirt on the fire's edge so that the fire has no material to burn anymore. So it stops the fire. Fire cannot progress without the material to burn. Next one is anyone sifting through our rubble? Sifting in a sense of going looking for belongings or material? No. What we do is that process that I just explained in and around structures to remove the heat. So as we get further down the road in this, you will probably hear us refer to making things safe, make safe. A part of that process is making sure that when people can come back in and they're in and around structures to get through that material and look for things that there is no heat in there, so nobody steps in to a hot ash pit, nobody gets burned, and also obviously the fire doesn't come up out of there. The next question I got is, what role do inmates have on this fire? So we go back to the handline question. Predominantly, that is what inmates are used for on the fire. That we use them as hand crews to put that handline in and construct that handline. And the last one that I have is, do the inmates have access to homes? No, they don't have access to the homes as far as like going into homes that are unburned. They will construct line in and around homes to protect them under the supervision of the fire captain very, very directly. And then some of the crews, they have secondary supervision on the line with them. And then their correctional officers are typically just outside of the fire area, so that if there's any concerns there, those guys are close.
Okay, thank you. So these group of questions all asking the same thing. What is the threat to these communities and what is being done in the communities of Encino Hill, Mountain Gate, Brentwood, and Sawtell? So just looking at where those areas are. So around Encino, you see it's up here. And then we're going to Brentwood, Mountain Gate's about here, and then Sawtell's down on the bottom. So very little activity around the fire, very little activity on the right side of this fire. There is heat inside there. People are working those edges. So the threat is at this point very minimal to all those communities. But we're still staying vigilant because we still have the weather that is upcoming. As far as work that's being done, we do have structured defense groups. What that is a group of resources that prepare for the just in case. As I always say, we plan to keep the fire as small as possible, but we prepare for adverse events to happen. So they have resources in all those areas, all from Encino all the way down into Brentwood. And they're just driving around and pre-planning so that they're prepared if anything has to be done. They don't have to stop and think. They already have a plan they can gauge readily. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our question and answer portion. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, these are a nightly occurrence. So please join us again tomorrow night at
Okay, so that just wrapped up there. Andrew Kraft back here. Wanted to make sure you saw a majority of it there live from LA County fire officials and incident commanders updating us on the latest when it comes to containment of the Palisades fire. And remember, we are expecting quite a wind event taking place tomorrow early morning and lasting into Wednesday afternoon, those red flag advisories. So that is the main concern right now, that the winds could pick up much like they did at the outset of the fire last Tuesday. And so we'll be tracking that here on Live Now from Fox. In the meantime here, I'm Andrew Kraft. Like I said, let's take our final commercial break. More top news where that came from in just a moment. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Let's wrap up Fox 11's broadcast there, last 5 minutes here with their weather forecast of what to expect in the next couple of days to combat the spread of these fires. Let's listen.
As well, because in those locations, the winds won't meet the criteria for a red flag warning. Winds will be a little bit lower there. But then we have these two pockets right here circled in the pink lines. That's where the red flag warning will switch to what we call a particularly dangerous situation, which is just a designation for the most extreme red flag warning events. That goes into effect for these areas at 4 a.m. tomorrow, last through noon on Wednesday. So that gives us a pretty good idea of when the strongest winds are likely to be. And a lot of that is looking to be north of LA. That's where the high wind warning is in effect. For those same time frames, 4 a.m. tomorrow to noon on Wednesday, that area in yellow is where gusts could get up to 60 to 70 miles per hour, which would not be as intense as the extremely strong winds we had when all this started last week. But still, this would be considered an extreme Santa Ana wind event on the way for Tuesday and into early Wednesday. All right, so we talked a lot about winds. We'll wrap up our forecast with a look at temperatures, because another thing that tends to happen when the air is quite dry like it is now, it actually cools down a lot at night. You see some low 40s, near 40-degree temperatures around LA. Look up to the north, teens and 20s up around the desert to Big Bear as well. So cold stuff there in the morning, and then as we go into tomorrow afternoon, we've got 60s to near 70-degree high temperatures for tomorrow. And by the way, there is unfortunately no rain in sight for really the entire West Coast, but certainly it looks like around here over the next 7 days. Fox 11 News will be right back after this break.
All right, and we thank Adam there for that forecast. He's been doing such a great job updating us on what these wind conditions are going to be looking like in the next couple of days here. I'm Andrew Kraft. We want to thank Fox 11 there in Los Angeles. We've been relying so heavily on them here on Live Now to help tell this really tough story to tell there. But in the meantime, like I said, we are nearing the top of the hour here. We're going to continue, though, with our wildfire coverage and some of the responses, especially from the federal government and the Biden-Harris administration. So we're going to get into that. We did hear from Biden and some of his emergency management response team there, members of his cabinet. So we'll get into that. They had a briefing today at the White House here. But let's just get the lowdown. Let's kind of reset here. Our colleague, Fox News correspondent Matt Finn, filed this report on where we are in this fire story. Let's listen.
Los Angeles County bracing for a second round of intense winds, 1 week after historic gusts fueled the catastrophic LA fires. Winds of 50 miles an hour and near hurricane-force gusts of 70 miles are forecasted for Tuesday.
We're absolutely better prepared.
Some 14,000 crews from California, 9 other states, as well as Mexico and Canada are staging on the ground and in the air. Lines of anxious people trying to get back to their homes have been forming at police barriers. But the Los Angeles County Sheriff says they're discovering human remains every day.
We have people literally looking for the remains of your neighbors.
Law enforcement also says some 36 people have been arrested for looting and other crimes, including this man who police say was dressed like a firefighter. An Altadena man says he's become neighborhood watch.
We go out and film the car and they can see us with a license plate, and then they disappear really quickly.
In the small city of Azusa, neighbors and police teamed up to stop a suspected 39-year-old transient arsonist who admitted to starting a small fire that firefighters quickly put out. LA County says it's investigating all possibilities of how the fire started, not ruling out arson or power transformers. So far, the Palisades and Eaton fires have burned an area larger than the city of San Francisco, destroying more than 12,000 structures.
This was my bedroom.
Marika Anderson is sorting through the rubble of her Altadena home.
I looked at our backyard and the fire, and I was like, okay, my house is burning down tonight.
She says love and support is pushing her through.
To be honest, I'm in shock.
Thursday afternoon, it was confirmed human remains were found in a Malibu home as a result of the Palisades fire. And unfortunately, the LA County Sheriff thinks the death toll will rise. In Altadena, California, Matt Finn, Fox News.
Matt, thanks so much. So in the meantime, at this hour, it's 8 o'clock here Mountain Time, 7 o'clock there Pacific Time on the West Coast. We are tracking this small brush fire there. This is a live picture in the Harupa Valley in Riverside County. So firefighters there in Riverside County try to knock this down. We're told that they have knocked down most of it. But you can see some of these flames still burning, not as high as the flames that we have seen over the course of the last week. In the meantime here, I'm Andrew Kraft. Like I said, it's a new hour. We're going to stay with this coverage. We're going to be asking some of the questions, some of the guests this hour that you have been asking about what may have caused this and what happens next with some of these weather advisories, red flag events, warnings, and the like on the books for the next couple of days here. I want to put this up, though. We're going to hear from President Biden in just a moment on replay. President Biden put out this tweet today saying, "Our hearts ache for the 24 innocent souls we have lost in the wildfires across Los Angeles. Jill and I pray for them and their loved ones. We're deeply saddened by the devastation caused by the unprecedented ongoing wildfires across Southern California." He says, "I'm being frequently briefed on intensive efforts to suppress the wildfires across Los Angeles and have directed our team to respond promptly to any request for additional federal firefighting assistance. At my direction, hundreds of federal personnel and unique federal aerial and ground support has been sent to California to support the firefighting efforts and help communities in need. My administration remains laser focused on helping survivors, and we will continue to use every tool available to support the urgent firefight as the winds are projected to increase. To the brave firefighters and first responders working day and night to suppress these fires and save lives, our nation is grateful. You represent the best of America, and we are in your debt." Now, President Biden there just today putting this statement out, saying he made additional disaster assistance available to the state of California by authorizing an increase in the level of federal funding for emergency work undertaken in the state of California as a result of the wildfires. He says under his order today, federal funds for debris removal and emergency protective measures, including direct federal assistance, have been increased to 100% of the total eligible costs for a period of up to 180 days of the state's choosing within the first 270 days from the start of the incident period. So the federal government picking up that cost in full. Here's President Biden from earlier today, meeting with Vice President Harris, DHS Secretary Mayorkas, FEMA Administrator Criswell, and others talking about the federal government response to this. Let's listen.
All right. Okay. Can you guys hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Well, look, we're headed into the second week of wildfires out in California. These wildfires are the worst in California history. And Vice President Harris and I are about to meet with Secretary Mayorkas, who is here, FEMA Administrator, FEMA Regional Administrator, and the Chief of the U.S. Forest Service. And first, I want to share an update on where things stand now, as we know. One, over the past few weeks, state and local and federal firefighters are able to prevent the largest fires from moving into new areas. In other words, they're able to contain the fires. 14% containment in the Pacific Palisades that's how much has been contained. 33% in the fire in Pasadena, 95% in Sylmar, and the fire in Ventura has been 100% contained. And that's progress. That said, it was a heartbreaking weekend for a lot of people in Los Angeles. Ash was raining down like snow. Homes burned to the ground. Thousands of those homes are gone. And we learned we lost more of our fellow Americans. So let's say again to the people of Los Angeles, we're with you. We're with you. And, although the federal government is going to cover 100% of the cost for the next 180 days for things like firefighter overtime pay, debris removal, temporary shelters, it's going to cost tens of billions of dollars to get Los Angeles back to where it was. So we're going to need Congress to step up to provide funding to get this done. And we're going to get that done, God willing. Over the next few days, we're expecting strong wind gusts that could move, more fires, more fuel for fires. And I'm continuing to direct the federal government to do everything possible, everything it possibly can to help California. I've sent equipment to Los Angeles, including helicopters, tanker planes, and fire engines. And our allies in Canada and Mexico have sent 130 firefighters and emergency responders, as the team knows. I've asked Bob Fenton of FEMA to help Hawaii after the Maui fires to take the lead in coordinating the federal support and debris recovery and removal in Los Angeles. And the first step of that is coordinating between FEMA, EPA, and the Army Corps of Engineers to remove the hazardous debris before you can get in and remove it all. And that hazardous debris includes things like propane tanks, electric vehicles, battery walls. Then the monumental task of removing the rest of that debris can begin. It's a monumental task. And I've activated 500 Marines from the base in Pendleton to stand by to help in search and rescue, airlift support, and food and water distribution. And I want to be clear, we're not waiting until those fires are over to start helping the victims. We're getting them help right now, as you all know. People impacted by these fires are going to receive one-time payment of $770, one-time payment, so they can quickly purchase things like water, baby formula, and prescriptions. So far, nearly 6,000 survivors have registered to do just that, and $5.1 million has gone out. And I encourage everyone who has been impacted to get assistance. Go to disasterassistance.gov or call 1-800-621-3362. Let me repeat that number. 1-800-621-3362. Before I turn this over to Vice President Harris, let me say again to all the incredible firefighters and first responders, thank you, thank you, thank you. Los Angeles is a city of angels, and you're now the angels, all of you. You're the angels literally saving people's lives, and we owe you. We owe your families who are also in harm's way, and you're still going out and doing your job. So the people of Los Angeles, thank you for sticking together, for helping one another through an unimaginable loss. And I want you to know, and I mean this, I want you to know we have no higher priority than the safety of you folks in Los Angeles. We're going to keep doing everything possible to help you get through this. And Vice President Harris, I now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. So what is happening in Los Angeles is truly heartbreaking, and there's an extraordinary amount of trauma that so many people are experiencing through loss of life, loss of their homes, loss of normalcy. And what I would ask is that on this day 7 of the fires, in the midst of the extraordinary exhaustion that everyone is feeling on so many levels, that we stay vigilant. The next 48 hours, as we will hear, are very critical. The winds are going to pick up with wind gusts that may reach as much as 70 miles per hour. And so this is the time that everyone must be vigilant, follow whatever orders you are receiving from your local authorities. If you are in any area where you may be called to evacuate, collect your belongings that you would want to take in the tragic event that you have to evacuate, and please be ready and prepared in that event. Lots of people who still have a home, who are under evacuation order, I know you want to get back home, but this is a time to be patient. There is still so much work that firefighters, police officers, FEMA, and others are doing that is about search and rescue. The work that still needs to be done to ensure the safety around utility lines. This work is still very much in progress. And so it's critically important that to the extent you can find anything that gives you an ability to be patient in this extremely dangerous and unprecedented crisis, that you do. But I'd echo what the President said. We have seen acts of courage, heroism, building of community, people looking out for strangers, and we applaud and are in awe of the generosity of spirit that we are seeing throughout the region. And so let us just always again thank our firefighters, our police officers, our first responders for what they are doing to personally sacrifice so much for the sake of others. Thank you. Thank you, Madam.
All right, so you just heard there from the President and the Vice President. You see there Secretary Mayorkas, FEMA Administrator Deanna Criswell, and others, Elizabeth Sherwood Randall there with the National Security Council. So we're going to step away from this. We just wanted to show you a little bit of that from Biden and Harris's remarks as well. But as you know, this is somewhat unrelated to our fire coverage here, but we do want just to let you know this is a kind of programming alert, programming preview. Come Wednesday night, we here on Live Now from Fox will be airing live coverage of President Biden's farewell address starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. My colleague, Andy Mack, and myself will be guiding you through before and after President Biden's address, his farewell address. It will be from the Oval Office in the White House. And remember, today marks 1 week out until the inauguration, January 20th, 2025, where President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Vance will be sworn in. Of course, a week from today, Monday, I'll be leading our coverage. We'll have live coverage starting at 9 a.m. Eastern of Trump's second inauguration there in Washington. We'll be back in 2 minutes. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Thanks for being with us here. Let's keep it moving. A lot of you have the question of whether or not President-elect Donald Trump will travel to Los Angeles and visit some of those impacted by the Palisades and Eaton fires. Well, the Wall Street Journal has some new reporting on that very question. They report that he is planning to visit fire-ravaged L.A. as soon as next week to view the damage and assess recovery needs. That's according to people familiar with his plans here. I'm reading right now from the report in the Wall Street Journal. They say the exact timing of the visit remains in flux, but Trump's advisors are tentatively considering a trip to the city late next week following the inauguration. Remember, the inauguration is on Monday. Trump's team, they report, is aware that a presidential visit involves a large footprint, and his advisors want to make sure his presence won't disrupt efforts to fight the wildfires. Now, the Wall Street Journal reports Trump's response to the fires will be an early test of his presidency. The city's recovery will require close coordination between federal, state, and local officials. The fires, which have ravaged the region for more than a week and led to 24 deaths, could prove to be one of the costliest natural disasters in U.S. history. Now, you know, Trump has publicly clashed with California Governor Gavin Newsom, who, along with other officials in the state, has asked Trump to come to L.A. to see the devastation for himself. Now, in recent days, you know, Trump has accused Newsom of gross incompetence and called on the governor to resign. Newsom has accused Trump of politicizing the fires. Just some more reporting on this from Fox. The Trump team saying their hearts go out to everybody impacted by the fires in California. They told Fox today that the president-elect has a very strong connection to the area, as he has owned properties in Southern California and has a golf course there. Newsom has invited Trump out to California. The Trump team says, as of now, there is no date yet set for a visit to California. So wanted to make sure we got that in there as well. In the meantime, we'll be tracking when that date is set in stone, but most likely will be taking place after the inauguration next Monday, a week from today. In the meantime here, like I said, I'm Andrew Kraft. Let's keep it moving. Let's get back to some of our fire coverage. With so many of these stories that you are following closely, questions that you have about the arrests that have been made when it comes to potential looters, potential violators of the curfews that are in place in the evacuation zones, and so much more. We heard from the district attorney there in Los Angeles, the new DA there, Nathan Hochman, and he caught up with some of our reporters there at a press conference he held just today, talking about some of the arrests that have been made when it comes to looting violations here. This is what he had to say. Let's listen. This is brief.
Found guilty, how severe are the sentences? Several people are looking at life in prison. People are looking at decades in prison. And probably the lowest level people that we charge today are looking at somewhere between 6 to 9 years in prison.
And are you seeing a pattern at all of the people who are trying to take advantage of this terrible tragedy?
I mean, certainly people with criminal backgrounds, we have seen that as part of the pattern. But unfortunately, there is no particular pattern that this falls into. It's cutting across different levels of society of people who think this is an opportunity to take advantage of people in their lowest moments. We just want to make sure they understand that the cost of that opportunity is going to be enormously severe.
On behalf of friends who believe they lost their homes or not have been 100% sure, they haven't been allowed back, they say, given the dire situation, why not allow them back in to check their homes out and, if need be, protect their homes?
So I've been in these areas, in the Palisades area in particular. The devastation is off the charts. There's no power there. There's no electricity. Electric poles are literally swinging in the streets. The amount of toxicity that exists in every one of these properties, because if you think about it, a single or two-story house no longer exists. Everything that could burn did burn. You probably only have steel and stone left in your house. And every other chemical that was in the walls of your house, the furniture or appliances or anything, is literally been burnt and now it sits on your property. You don't want to get near that stuff until it's proper to go there. And also, if everyone were to return to these areas, it's a fire danger, because when I was there as recently as 2 days ago, there were still small little fires with gas mains and gas pipes that had burst and that have not been closed. It's an incredibly dangerous environment to be to. So I, too, am someone who's been evacuated since last Tuesday. My sister lost her house in the Pacific Palisades. I understand the frustration. I understand the anger that people have. And when they hear that there could also be looters out there that are trying to take advantage of this situation, that's why we had the press conference today, to say, look, we're going to work as swiftly as possible, take these cases from law enforcement, bring the charges, and bring these people to justice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry for what your family's going through.
All right, so that was Fox 11 there with Palisade there with the new DA in Los Angeles, Nathan Hochman here. Our colleague Bill Malugin with this reiterating what was said at this press conference today. Hochman announcing felony charges against 9 people accused of burglarizing and looting during the wildfires, including Martrell Peoples, a 2-striker, and Damari Bell, a 1-striker, accused of stealing $200,000+ from a Mandeville Canyon home during the Palisades fire. Malugin reports with this potential 3rd strike, Peoples faces life in prison, while Bell faces 22 years with his potential 2nd strike. So wanted to make sure we got that in there. It's not just looting, but also allegations of price gouging going on. We want to talk about all of this and some of the lawsuits that have already been filed against some of the major utility companies there in Southern California, including Southern California Edison. So let's bring into the conversation now for a wide-ranging conversation, our colleague and friend there, former federal prosecutor and legal analyst Nima Rahmani. He joins me. Nima, good to see you. I know you're based in L.A. We're glad you're okay, but no doubt so many people are reeling right now. And I got to ask, let's start with some of these looting charges as well. You know, this is an unfortunate reality in the wake of natural disasters. Did Hochman strike the right tone on that?
Andrew, I think he did. And I used to work with Hochman, and this is a refreshing change from our previous district attorney, George Gascon. Here's someone that is going to treat these looters with the criminal justice that they deserve. They're taking advantage of their fellow Angelinos in their most dire states. These are people that have lost their homes. They can't return to their homes because they're damaged. And what are these looters doing? They're committing the worst crime imaginable. They're trying to steal from people who have lost it all. I mean, let's be real. These people, even if they have insurance, no one has enough insurance to rebuild here, Andrew. People are woefully underinsured. They are going to lose everything, and to have their personal possessions taken from them because they had to leave their homes with just a few minutes notice is really beyond the pale. So I'm glad that the new district attorney is taking this very harsh and aggressive stance against these looters.
And just today, at the latest update on the Palisades fire, new California Senator, the Democrat Adam Schiff, said there's a special place in hell for those who loot while these natural disaster responses are ongoing. Nima, let's focus on price gouging as well and some of the allegations that have been bandied about in the LA County area. You tweeted this today. I want to read it. You said, I live and work in LA. I've seen significant price gouging in real estate in violation of Penal Code 396. California law prohibits owners and landlords from increasing prices and rents by more than 10% during a state of emergency. And you also go on to say you can compare the listings before January 7th to see if they've increased by more than 10%. If a property was not on the market before the fires, the price cannot be more than 160% of the fair market value as determined by Housing and Urban Development, the federal agency there. You say hopefully the AG, DA, and city attorney investigate and prosecute these cases here. So what is the law on the books there in California when it comes to price gouging? You say you've seen instances of it. Where?
I have in the real estate market. Under California law, doesn't matter what it is, prices cannot increase by more than 10% during a state of emergency. So here you have thousands of people who have lost their homes. The rental market is skyrocketing. And you have these unscrupulous landlords and real estate agents that are taking advantage, jacking up prices by 50%, sometimes 100%. And people are so desperate, Andrew, to find a place for their family. They're paying these prices. Now, maybe there's some mom and pops that don't understand the law, but I want to make it clear to anyone watching that this is unlawful. You can't take advantage of people like this. So, and it's very easy in the real estate market. You see what the listing was on January 6th, the day before the fires. You see what it is the day of the fire, the day after, and it's a clear violation. And again, we talked about the looters, Andrew. This is another sad reality. People are trying to take financial advantage of these victims, and it's just heartbreaking, and it's frankly reprehensible.
So you would agree with Schiff's sentiment for these price gougers or alleged price gougers, that there's a special place in hell for them. What about the punitive measures if, say, someone is caught price gouging and they're prosecuted, tried, and convicted for it? What are they looking at?
Well, it's certainly not a life case, and I agree with Senator Schiff. He's a former federal prosecutor, too. Unfortunately, it's not a felony. It's not something that's going to land someone in prison for the rest of their life, like a third strike or an arson that results in death that we're seeing here. It's a misdemeanor, but it still should be prosecuted to send a message. I don't care if you're a real estate agent, a broker, owner, a landlord. You can't do this. And especially when the market is what it is. So many folks are out of their homes. I've had family members who have been displaced who are living with me. I've had colleagues. I've had friends who have lost their home, their entire possession. They're, living in another county or sleeping on someone's couch. And to have people do this, I need the Attorney General. I need Hochman. I need the city attorney to file these cases because, like you see, they do get a lot of press, and it will send a message, and hopefully it'll stop this behavior.
So I want to put this tweet up here. LA County put this out. Price gouging is illegal during emergencies, and they have a number and a website, or email address, rather, that you can report instances if you see it. But it's not just homes and rental properties that can be gouged, right, Nima?
Absolutely. I mean, we saw during the pandemic where, supplies, food, masks, what people need to live. I mean, you go to the grocery store now, it is shades of the lockdown. The shelves are empty. There's been a run on basic supplies like water. It's getting better over the past couple of days, but it really shows, how fragile everything is and how it can be taken away in just a moment's notice. I mean, I was on Live Now talking about other cases, President Trump's sentencing, the TikTok ban just last week. And now look at these images of Los Angeles. It looks like a war zone, like someone dropped a bomb here. So things are really in dire straits here. The National Guard has come in. That's certainly helped, and things are getting back to normal. I just hope that the winds don't pick up later this week and we have more fires. That would be a big problem.
Yes, it would. I want to ask, though, is it kind of a 50-50 split when it comes to the effort with law enforcement Do they look for the instances of gouging themselves, or do they rely mostly on the public to report it, or is it a joint effort in tandem?
It's really something that the public needs to report. Now,
Oh.
Bonta, the Attorney General, has come out. He had a press conference putting together a task force, but this is something that we really need folks who are watching. If you see someone doing this, and it's very easy just to compare the prices before and after, especially now that everything's online. If you see this, report this so the individuals who are trying to take financial advantage of these victims are prosecuted and brought to justice. It really needs a public effort here.
You know, Nima, while we have you, I know we're moving around from kind of topic to topic here, but one of the main questions out there still is what caused the Palisades fire? What caused the Eaton fire? And we're getting a little bit of reporting, and that's getting fleshed out in the days since January 7th when this broke out. But still, it's not definitive just yet. We wait for more reporting on those very questions of what led to the cause of these fires, though we can get a sense of where some of the blame is being directed and or shifted by some of the lawsuits that have been filed against some of the utility companies in Southern California here. Our colleague Matt Finn reports that a lawsuit was filed against SoCal Edison over the historic Eaton fire near Pasadena. And I want to read from the report in Reuters as well. Nima, Reuters reporting Southern California Edison was hit by multiple lawsuits today, claiming its electrical equipment started one of the major wildfires currently raging in the LA area. That's according to court filings. According to Reuters, they say this, that the legal actions appear to be the first of hundreds or even thousands of claims that may arise from the wildfires that have engulfed parts of Southern California in the past week. So, Nima, walk us through some of these lawsuits. Who can file them? What claims do they have to present to file them? And how does a utility company as large as SoCal Edison defend themselves?
Well, we're going to see a lot of lawsuits, Andrew, and I'm representing some of these victims, and there's going to be thousands of them. Let's start with the Eaton fire. It does appear, based on the pictures and the videos, and we've all seen them on social media, that a SoCal Edison line sparked the fire. There was overgrown vegetation. There was a warning we all got the day before, but instead of de-energizing and shutting down those lines, notwithstanding knowing that the Palisades fire was burning for hours, Edison didn't do so, and they're likely the cause of that fire that burned so many acres and destroyed so many homes and displaced so many people. Palisades, it's a little bit less clear. It does appear to maybe be a rekindling of an earlier fire, maybe caused by Mother Nature. Now, there are folks who are filing lawsuits against the city and the state, and we've seen the social media posts about the lack of water in the St. Inez Reservoir and the lack of water in the hydrants. Those types of claims are going to be much more challenging because the government tends to have broad immunity in these types of cases and discretionary immunity. So I expect the city and DWP and the state to file motions to dismiss. And I wouldn't be surprised if those lawsuits are indeed dismissed, because the legal hurdle is a lot higher for the folks who are in Malibu, who are in Pasadena. They may be relying entirely on insurance coverage, which, like I said, is a big problem because folks are underinsured. Now, in Eaton Canyon, there may be that recovery from a utility company down the road to supplement what people do get from their insurance company.
So if you're SoCal Edison, though, do you have immunity? I mean, we've kind of been through this before on somewhat of a smaller scale, several years ago with Pacific Gas and Electric, the main utility in Northern California after some of these fires broke out. And we know what happened to PG&E, and their reputation was really, really tarnished in the wake of those fires. Is that what SoCal Edison is looking like or looking to expect in the wake of this? I know we're not even a week removed from the start of the fires here, but do they have a battle ahead of them if you're the utility company?
They absolutely have a battle ahead of them. We're talking about billions of dollars in damage here, and there's a lot of evidence that they're on the hook. And we talked about PG&E, and Edison may be forced into bankruptcy, or frankly may not have the funds to pay for one of the worst fires in American history. If you're just looking at the damage in terms of the homes lost and the billions of dollars in fire payments that will have to be paid out. So no question. And, SoCal Edison has come out. They've had some filings. They're a public company, and they've been very careful about what they've said. And the reason they've been careful, certainly they don't want to admit liability, but they have shareholders as well. And the shareholders are probably very much concerned about this huge liability. And we saw a few lawsuits filed today, Andrew, but we're going to see hundreds or thousands because, again, there does seem to be evidence that they were directly responsible for this fire and they could have prevented it. So unless they happen to win this case and prove to a judge and jury that they were not responsible or liable, this is the type of litigation that can break a company.
And of course, this is all going to be adjudicated and litigated over the course of the next, 5, 7, 10 years. But to your point, you're saying SoCal Edison has a fight ahead of them.
Oh, no question they have a fight ahead of them because people are not going to be made whole, Andrew.
Okay.
Everyone in California, they're going to get less than their home was worth because of the insurance. And that's why, there's lawyers, lots of lawyers here in Los Angeles, they're handling these insurance claims, like myself, pro bono for free because we know that Angelenos need this money desperately today. And like you said, the litigation against the utility company, that's not going to be resolved for years at the earliest. That money is not coming to victims in 2025 or 2026. That's something that may come years down the road once these cases get pushed to trial or the brink of trial. So the folks that need money for rent, for a place to live today, they have to file those insurance claims. They have to get that FEMA assistance to get back on their feet. And that's something that needs to happen very, very soon while these lawsuits against Edison play out over the course of the next few years.
All right, Nima Rahmani, we can't thank you enough. We know you're local to LA, and we're going to continue following these fires there. Nima, thanks. Talk soon.
Thanks, Andrew. Talk to you soon.
All right, in the meantime here, remember, we've been tracking some of these questions you have and some of the reporting out there to suggest where are the investigations going about what led to the causes of these fires here. I want to put this up from our colleague Bill Malugin, saying that ATF has announced its elite national response team has arrived in LA to investigate the cause of the catastrophic Palisades fire. 2 prongs. One team will analyze the scene, including damage and burn patterns, while another will gather surveillance video, digital evidence, etc. there. So I wanted to make sure we got that in as well. There's a lot in store, a lot more angles to cover, entertainment angles, sports angles, and the economic costs that will be rendered and inflicted on this part of the country, this part of California in the wake of this. The losses keep mounting, and they're staggering. All right, in the meantime, let's take a quick commercial break. When we come back, though, we have to move on to some of these other top headlines today. Don't worry, the fires are front and center for our coverage, but as you know, and if you've been with Live Now from Fox, if you've been viewing for quite some time, we have covered every single development in the Israel-Hamas war since October 7th of 2023. And now we seem to be on the precipice of yet another ceasefire hostage deal. We'll be breaking that down after the break. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. We do want to just sneak in a segment on the Israel-Hamas war and the ongoing ceasefire hostage deal negotiations that seem to be reaching some type of breakthrough, though we have to acknowledge we have been in this position before multiple times. It does somewhat feel like Groundhog Day. I want to put this up here from Reuters saying negotiators will meet in Doha tomorrow seeking to finalize details of a plan to end the war in Gaza after President Biden said a ceasefire and hostage deal he has championed was on the brink of coming to fruition. Of course, we've been relying so heavily on Fox's Trey Yingst, who's been in the region throughout the course of this war. He filed this report today. Let's listen.
And get done this week.
The Biden administration could be ending with a breakthrough in the Middle East. Officials say they see significant progress between U.S. and Arab mediators towards brokering an Israel-Hamas ceasefire and hostage release deal.
A structure would free the hostages,
halt the fighting, provide security to Israel, and allow us to significantly surge humanitarian assistance to the Palestinians who've suffered terribly in this war that Hamas started.
Sunday, President Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu were on the phone. The White House said Biden discussed the changing regional circumstances in Lebanon, Iran, and Syria, and stressed the need for the fighting to end. Also cooperating on negotiations is the incoming Trump team.
These are not partisan issues. These are American national security issues. Our coordination thus far, the engagement we've had, it's been professional, it's been deep and substantive.
There's been only one brief ceasefire since the war began in October 2023, and Hamas is still holding nearly 100 hostages in Gaza. Their families say they feel overlooked.
We're not getting any guidance yet from the government of Israel, understanding if it is a deal for all the hostages or is it just a partial deal.
The war ignited a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. So far, more than 46,000 Palestinians have been killed, though that number does not differentiate between militants and civilians. In Tel Aviv, Trey Yingst, Fox News.
And welcome here. Thank you to Trey as well for covering that. We do have live pictures in the region there, live in Tel Aviv, also live there in southern Israel, looking into the Gaza Strip. So live pictures there. I want to put up this tweet, though, from Trey Yingst, saying the final draft of a ceasefire agreement was reportedly presented overnight. He says a deal between Israel and Hamas could be just hours away to start a process that would see Israeli hostages exchanged for Palestinian prisoners, followed by an end of the war in Gaza. Lucas Tomlinson with Fox, though, has more on this. If Hamas agrees to phase one, that will pave the way for roughly 33 hostages to be released, women, children, and the elderly. Officials are hopeful 2 Americans are included in this release days before Trump's inauguration. Phase one of the deal would kick off a 42-day ceasefire. During this time, Israeli forces would not withdraw completely from Gaza. The IDF would pull back from the Philadelphia corridor. Remember, that's that barrier, that border region between Egypt and Gaza and other locations. In the meantime here, we do want to bring into the conversation our friend there at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, Joe Truzman. He joins us with the latest. Joe, thanks for being with us. We've relied so heavily on you guys there at FDD to help us make sense of all of these iterations, really since November of 2023, since these negotiations have continued. They've stalled, they've broken down. I've lost track, I've lost count. Are we on the precipice of a breakthrough, or is it same old?
Always happy to be here with you folks. And you kind of alluded to it earlier. I'm feeling a little bit of deja vu as well about these negotiations. You know, in the past, we've seen it, right? There's some good news emerges about negotiations between Hamas and Israel, and then for all of it to essentially stall. So nevertheless, we're here now and we're hearing similar news. I have observed some different, some interesting movement, all right, which is positive news. Hamas is conferring with its allies. So are the Israelis, and of course they're conferring with the mediators involved, whether it's Qatar or Egypt, of course the United States, and other partners. And also we have Trump's warning looming over these negotiations. So that's an added factor. I think that's important here. So I am hopeful, but of course cautious. And I'll tell you, you know, as an analyst, the devil is in the details, right? Yeah. And we don't know a lot about the details. As you mentioned, there's 2 phases here that's involved, but there's a lot more that we need to know that we just haven't found out yet.
So, Joe, we have a readout in front of us. President Biden had a phone call with the Qatari emir today. He spoke on the phone with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday. The readout from Qatar today saying Biden spoke today with him. The 2 leaders discussed the negotiations in Doha for a ceasefire and hostage release deal based on the May 27th, 2024 arrangement described by the president last year and endorsed unanimously by the UN Security Council. To your point, we don't really have a window into, you know, who's thinking what here. So I'm loath to ask this question to you, but what are we waiting for? What is the holdup? Do we even know? What are the sticking points right now?
Right. So I think the sticky points more than anything is what Hamas has wanted this whole time, and that's essentially to survive the war. That's what they want more than anything. It's not the safety of Palestinian civilians. All right. It's definitely not the safety of Israelis. They want to ensure that they're going to survive the war. They want guarantees. That even if they don't trust the Israelis, they'll trust the guarantors, whether it's Egypt or Qatar or the United States, for example, that Hamas will be able to govern the Gaza Strip after this war is over. You have to remember that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said at least one of his goals was to eliminate Hamas's ability to govern the Gaza Strip. And I think this is what why Hamas has been holding things up so much. They want to continue their rule there. So that's why as I was mentioning earlier, the devil's in the details. That's what I want to know. What is going to happen to Hamas after this, or rather when this ceasefire is signed, and if there is permanent, if hostilities cease permanently? They're not just going to go away. There are still battalions of Hamas fighters in the Gaza Strip that are active at this moment. So there's a lot of unknowns here, and that's the problem.
All right, so breaking right now, I just want to put this up here. President-elect Donald Trump just wrapped up an interview on another outlet talking about this. Barack Ravid there at Axios is highlighting what Trump said, telling Newsmax tonight, Joe, Israel and Hamas are very close to getting a hostage and ceasefire deal. He said, I understand that there has been a handshake and they are getting it finished maybe by the end of the week here. I mean, that is the most optimistic, bullish thing I have heard from anyone on this in the last, 14, 15 months here. Trump saying it on Newsmax tonight. Could this happen before January 20th, a week from today? The inauguration, a la the Iran hostage crisis when Reagan was sworn in 1981. The U.S. hostages were released from the embassy there in Tehran. I mean, you're kind of getting that sense right now. The vibes are out there. But the poor hostage families, they have been in this position so many times. What do you think they think when they hear Trump say something like that?
Well, I imagine they're hopeful. I don't think Trump would say this if he knew the answer, what was going to happen. But again, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news here, but we have to be honest with ourselves. Israel is dealing with terrorist organizations. It's not only Hamas. There are other terrorist groups in the Gaza Strip that are involved here. And not only the terrorist groups in the Gaza Strip who are holding the hostages, but their supporters, nation states, Qatar, Turkey, Iran, and others. So there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of actors involved here. So it's hopeful. And what President Trump said is good news. So it seems that something is going to happen here. But again, we're dealing with terrorist organizations. We've got to be careful. So honestly, with me, until I see hostages being handed over by Hamas to the Israelis, I honestly won't believe it.
Okay, because, I mean, obviously we've heard President-elect Trump say there will be hell to pay if the hostages, all of them, aren't released before Inauguration Day. We're a week out, so time is running out on that somewhat, assertion and claim by Trump there. Let's talk about some of the nitty-gritty details of the phases here. Some might argue that there is an imbalance in what Israel has put forth and is requesting and has agreed to, and what Hamas is expecting in the exchange with hostages. In the first phase, 33 of them. We're told that there's possibly about 100 still there, either living or dead. And then what Hamas is asking for, the release of Palestinian prisoners, there seemed to be an imbalance. It's almost 2-to-1 in favor of Hamas. Now, is that the right way to look at it or not? Israel has done this before, too.
Correct. Yes, they've done this. It's certainly an imbalance, absolutely. And you could say it's not fair for the Israelis. We have to remember Gilad Shalit in 2012, when he was released. He was an IDF soldier. Over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners were released for one IDF soldier. And one of those Palestinian prisoners was Yahya Sinwar, the former chief of Hamas. So nevertheless, it's absolutely an imbalance, but this is the way it's been. Not only with Hamas, with other terrorist groups as well when it comes to prisoner swaps or hostage swaps with Israel. Unfortunately, this is the way it's been. It's a cycle that unfortunately the Israelis haven't been able to break. We saw it in December as well, 2023, when the Israelis released several, I believe it was several hundred terrorists for a handful of hostages. So it's absolutely unfair, but I think we're going to see this again. Now, the details here is who are the Israelis going to release? And I think there's going to be some tough questions, or rather, the Israelis are going to have to answer some tough questions because Hamas is going to go after those what are often called heavy hitters, the bomb makers of Hamas, the leaders like the PFLP leader Ahmed Saadat, who has been in an Israeli prison for years now. I imagine Hamas wants him out too. So we're going to see the list sooner or later, and we'll find out who it is.
Yeah, the Associated Press has it that the two sides have exchanged lists of names, with Israel demanding more information about which hostages are alive and which are dead to make sure the alive hostages obviously come out first. Hamas says it needs at least a brief truce to determine the status of the hostages. And we were talking with experts throughout the last couple of weeks, and I had asked some of them, how does Hamas even know who's alive and who's dead? The administrative capacity of a group like Hamas seems to have been curtailed quite greatly. Joe, I also wanted to ask, too, the release of Palestinian prisoners. I was reading whoever is released, and they've been convicted for various crimes, low to high in degree, that they won't go back into Gaza or the West Bank. They'll be sent elsewhere in the region. Have you seen that?
Yes, as I mentioned, Gilad Shalit in 2012. Some of the terrorists that were released by the Israelis were deported, I believe, to Turkey. So I'm not surprised they're doing something similar. Not that they're going to be deported to Turkey now, but they're not staying at least locally. And that's a good thing, I think, for Israel, because let's be honest, these terrorists, they're not just going to be released and, start a new life and do something completely different. Sure. They're likely going to go back to Hamas and go back to their old ways. And that's a problem that the Israelis will have to deal with. They had to do it with some of the prisoners that were released in 2012 with Gilad Shalit. Those prisoners went back to terrorism. So this is going to be a problem for the Israelis down the road, I think. So they just have to be very careful who they release. And as we see with Sinwar, they released him, and look what he became.
Right.
So there's a lot of questions up in the air right now. And again, I'd love to see that list of who's going to be released.
All right, Joe Truceman with the FDD. Joe, thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Take care.
All right, in the meantime here, that is significant, and I don't say that lightly. We have covered so many iterations of some of these hostage ceasefire deal negotiations that once you think they're about to make a breakthrough, one of the sides pulls back, and most of that time, Hamas has been that side to pull back, to reject. And so that's why I thought it was really, really significant that Trump said this on Newsmax just tonight, that Israel and Hamas are very close. He says, quote, "I understand that there has been a handshake and they are getting it finished, maybe by the end of the week." So that would be quite something if that came to pass before Inauguration Day. In the meantime here, let's take our final commercial break. Just a programming note, at the top of the 11 o'clock Mountain Time, 10 o'clock Pacific Time hour, we will be getting back into Fox 11 Los Angeles for their extended coverage of the LA wildfires, the Palisades fire, the Eaton fire, still burning. So don't worry, we're not moving away from that story. We're just taking a brief pause to get in some of these other top headlines. But we will just wanted to reassure you that we'll get back to that. Fox 11 will be back on the air later tonight. We'll see you after the break. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. We're approaching the top of the next hour. Let's get into more of some of these other top headlines here. Of course, in our continuing coverage of the New Orleans terror attack, I want to read out to you a public service announcement put out today by the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, and it goes as follows. Well, they say this, the FBI and DHS are issuing this public service announcement to highlight a potential public safety threat from violent extremists in response to the New Year's Day attack in New Orleans, Louisiana. As with any potential threats to the United States, we will coordinate with our state and local law enforcement partners to ensure they have the resources and information necessary to to keep our communities safe. Now, they say this: the FBI and DHS are concerned about possible copycat or retaliatory attacks due to the persistent appeal of vehicle ramming as a tactic for aspiring violent extremist attackers. Previous attackers inspired by foreign terrorist organizations who have conducted vehicle attacks in the United States and abroad have used rented, stolen, and personally owned vehicles, which are easy to acquire. They say some have used additional weapons, such as firearms and knives, to attack individuals after the vehicle has stopped. Additionally, attackers may attempt to conceal and preposition improvised explosive devices to supplement a vehicle attack. Targets have included pedestrians, law enforcement, or military members, and crowded public venues, including festivals and commercial centers, which generally are accessible from roadways. They say we ask the public remain vigilant regarding possible copycat or retaliatory attacks and report any suspicious activity to law enforcement there. So the FBI field office in New Orleans saying that they are issuing this PSA to highlight the threat of copycat attacks after the ISIS-inspired vehicle attack in New Orleans, saying the public is encouraged to report information concerning suspicious activity to the FBI or call 911 if danger is imminent. So remember, we're now 13 days removed from that horrible attack that killed 14 people, injured so many others on New Year's Day in the French Quarter on Bourbon Street. I only bring this up and want to make sure you're aware of this because another major event is going to be taking place a week from today, and that, of course, is the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance. Live picture there at the White House. We heard from relevant law enforcement today, from U.S. Capitol Police, D.C. Police, and the Secret Service about the safety precautions and security preparations that are being made in the run-up to Inauguration Day. And we heard from Chief Manger of the U.S. Capitol Police saying that the kind of highest priority, largest threat out there are lone wolves, much like the suspect in New Orleans, Jabbar, turned out to be. Our colleague there, Fox's Jared Halpern, has more on these security preparations for Inauguration Day. Let's listen.
The stage is set for the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump next week. And while the pomp and circumstance seems ready to go, recent attempts on Trump's life have security top of mind.
The biggest threat, I think, for all of us remains the lone actor.
The Secret Service has authorized a security plan that coordinates with local law enforcement, military personnel, and federal partners like the FBI. Officials estimate there will be approximately 25,000 law enforcement and military personnel on site to secure the event.
We are in a higher threat environment.
Areas around the National Mall and the United States Capitol will see additional fencing and concrete barriers added for the event.
More than 30 miles of anti-scale fence will be used for the inauguration, more than any other NSSE ever before.
Officials are expecting nearly 250,000 ticketed guests.
We expect much larger crowds. In addition to that, there will be folks that are showing up to participate in a number of demonstrations.
Officials say they are ready.
We are not currently tracking any specific or credible threats to the inaugural ceremony or to the Capitol complex. We will continue to work closely with our partners.
Meanwhile, the Trump-Vance Inaugural Committee has announced its schedule of events. Highlights include several receptions, rallies, ceremonies, and balls. Plus, Fox News Digital has learned American Idol winner Carrie Underwood will sing America the Beautiful during the swearing-in ceremony. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Jared, thanks so much. Speaking of Carrie Underwood performing there at the inauguration, she released a statement today saying, quote, "I love our country and am honored to have been asked to sing at the inauguration and to be a small part of this historic event." She says, "I'm humbled to answer the call at a time when we must all come together in the spirit of unity and looking to the future." So just a programming preview for you, programming alert there on inauguration. I'll be leading the coverage starting on Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern on the 20th. Of course, it's a huge day, not only for so many of us who want to watch Trump and Vance be sworn in, but it is also Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And it is also the college football championship game day as well. So January 20th shaping up to be quite a busy day in the news. But of course, we will have live coverage from start to finish of Trump's second inauguration. In the meantime here, we do want to get out, though, to some of this security briefing that was held today. Let's listen.
Event. Be prepared for security checkpoints and an extensive perimeter downtown. Road closures will go into effect early Sunday morning, January 19th. We ask that you avoid driving if at all possible and use our metro stations as a better option to get around. There will be several closures that will also impact the areas around the Washington Convention Center, Capital One Arena, Union Station, and the National Cathedral. Details are available at inauguration.dc.gov, and we encourage you to plan ahead. As the inaugural events unfold, our state-of-the-art Joint Operations Command Center will monitor events in real time, leveraging an expanded camera network to manage crowds and security checkpoints. We'll be ready to respond quickly to any situation. And please note that MPD will ensure your right to peacefully protest and assemble. However, I want to reiterate, as I always have, that violence, destruction, and unlawful behavior will not be tolerated. Offenders will face swift and decisive consequences. On last Friday, a group of protesters outside of the National Archives broke the law and began tearing down signage. Our Special Operations Division was deployed and quickly moved in and made 7 arrests, 6 for unlawful entry and 1 for crossing a police line. We will maintain that swift response to any similar activity that plays out across our city, and we will not tolerate any violence. We want people to come to the District of Columbia to enjoy our city, but those who break the law will be arrested and will be held accountable for their actions. We also ask for your help in making sure that everyone stays safe by being an extra pair of eyes and ears. If you see something, say something. Report suspicious activity to 911 or submit tips to 202-727-9099 via text to 50411 or online at iwatchdc.org. In addition to DC government's 60th presidential inauguration website, MPD will be providing updates on road closures and security impacts through our social media channels. And finally, I'd like to thank the men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department and recognize their dedication and hard work to support the presidential inauguration. Thank you for your cooperation and thank you in advance for your patience. Together, we will ensure a safe and successful presidential inauguration. Now I'll turn it over to Metro General Manager Randy Clark to discuss impacts on the Metro system.
Good morning, everyone. As the Chief said, I'm Randy Clark, the WMATA General Manager. I want to thank the Mayor for having us here today with all of our partners. Obviously, a very successful week with 2 national security events, and as the Mayor and I were discussing earlier, a pretty significant weather event. And I think these partnerships demonstrate everyone working together got us through that, and we look forward to doing that again for the upcoming inauguration. I'm going to take a moment and go through generally some pretty significant service impacts, because I think that's going to be the most impactful for people visiting the inauguration and local residents. But just highlighting, you know, this is again not Metro's first inauguration, just like all the agencies up here. Our Transit Police Department is led by Chief Anzala. This will actually be his 10th inauguration, working both for DC, MPD, and now us. We feel very confident with the measures we put in place, a lot of preparedness. We have 15 other law enforcement transit police agencies around the country, similar to as Chief Smith mentioned, to come in and supplement our workforce. We also have our National Guard partners, which we very much appreciate, and TSA. So probably throughout the Metro system, we'll have over 900 security uniformed personnel to keep people safe. They'll be walking trains, they'll be in platforms, bus areas. The whole idea is to get ahead of something, see something, say something, lots of uniformed personnel to keep people safe. Additionally, there'll be lots of signage out through all the system, really explaining to people where they can go and where they can't go. I want to highlight WMATA.com/inauguration for people that are really trying to get some granular information. We'll go through that in a little bit more detail. So as Chief Manger said, we did get a request from the Secret Service and the Capitol Police, and we were going to be opening the Metro Rail system at 4 a.m. the day of inauguration to help with crowds. We will have increased service throughout the day as well. On the red line, we expect 4-minute frequency all day long, 8 minutes on all the other lines, and the yellow line we're going to extend to Greenbelt, so we can really connect Virginia, Maryland, and DC all together on those lines. There are some significant station closures, though, at the request of Secret Service as well. McPherson Square Station, Federal Triangle, and Smithsonian, those are on the blue, orange, and silver lines. They will all be closed. The green, yellow lines, we're going to have Mount Vernon Square and Archive stations closed. Now, we are going to run service through those stations. That just means people will not be able to enter or exit those stations. We will be running trains through those stations. There are some additional station closures and entrance closures at other times, specifically Farragut West. Half the station will be open, but we will have entrance open. At Metro Center, the same thing. Gallery Place, Judiciary Square, and then Union Station. So there's obviously other events outside of inauguration going on. Again, WMATA.com/inauguration for those specific things. We'll also be posting everything on social media, and we encourage people to follow Metro Pulse. So significant amount of rail impact throughout the multi-day process. We also have 41 bus detours throughout the whole downtown area. I think it's fair to say if you have to go downtown, like the mayor said, please prepare and try to find alternatives as best as you possibly can. A couple other quick highlights we're going to do. We encourage people to pay with either a Smart Trip card or on your phone. You can just tap your Apple Pay and go. The other thing is we are coming out with our inaugural commemorative Smart Trip card with President Trump on it. It's going to be available at 16 stations, and I believe we're posting those at stations on January 15th. Lastly, I just want to thank all the Metro staff, and just like every other leader up here. This is an incredible partnership. I've been in multiple cities doing a lot of events. There's nothing better than how it's done here in the National Capital Region. But the men and women at Metro have been working nonstop for over a week, dealing with 2 snow events, 2 national security events, and just running regular service. So just want to take a moment and recognize all their hard work, and thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I also want to recognize that I've been joined by the city administrator for the district, Kevin Donahue, the director of DC Homeland Security, Clint Osborne, and the deputy mayor for public safety and justice, Lindsay Apia. So with that, we'll take a few questions. Yes, please introduce yourself. And I think you have a microphone coming.
Thank you. My name is Sonia Schott with Diario Las Americas. I would like to know what is different this year in comparison to last year's in the light of the recent events, security events happening in New Orleans and also recently during one of the rallies of President-elect Trump.
Let me ask Agent McCool to address that.
So I would say what's different is we are in a higher threat environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, given the events.
In comparison to last year's, what is the difference in comparison to the last inauguration or previous inauguration?
Last inauguration.
Yeah.
I would say we have a slightly more robust security plan. We've been planning for this event for 12 months, along with our partners. It's an ever-changing threat environment, and so we stay flexible. If we see that, hey, we need to shore this particular checkpoint up, we do that. So what's different? We've learned. This is our 5th NSSE this year in the Washington field office. We've done 83 NSSEs. Each one we take a look at, and if there's areas where we need to improve, we do it. But what I can tell you is that we are 100% confident in the plan that we have put in place for this inauguration, that the public and our protectees will be safe.
And can you give a number of people who are going to be put in place in order to law enforcement agents also?
So there'll be approximately 25,000 law enforcement and military personnel on site to secure the event.
Yes. Thank you very much. Gabriella Border with Reuters. Do you have an estimate on how many people are going to be coming into town between Saturday's demonstration and Monday's inauguration? And do you have any idea how many residents are going to be leaving town during that period?
I don't know how many residents are going to be leaving town. It is a holiday weekend, so I would expect that it will be similar numbers of personal travel on that weekend. So let me just ask the chief to speak to any other estimates from the permits that we have on hand. And Chief Major spoke to a number that he's aware of ticketed event totals. But beyond that, we don't get in the business of estimating how many people. We look at the data that we have for people who have tickets and the like. So, Chief.
So we do have on January 20th approximately about 12 First Amendment activities. One in particular on the 19th is the People's March, which we have an estimate of about, initially the permit said about 50,000 people. I think as of today, we're looking at about maybe 25,000 or less. We will be prepared. We've dealt with this group size before during the last inauguration. I think it was called the Women's March at that time, and now it's the People's March. And we will be prepared. And that's the largest event with respect to numbers of people coming into the city. Again, we don't give numbers, but we will be prepared to address any large groups that come to our city.
All right, so you've been listening there to, that's the D.C. Police Chief, Mayor Bowser as well. We're going to step away from this. We know that the inauguration, and remember, so was the Electoral College certification, January 6th. They were designated and specialized as national special security events, ramping up the security for these events here. So want to just make sure you heard a little bit of that, though. I'm Andrew Kraft. Let's take a quick commercial break. When we come back, though, we're going to dive headlong yet again into the fire response there in Southern California, in Los Angeles County. And remember, in a couple of hours, we'll go back to Fox 11 Los Angeles as well. They're not in programming right now, but they will be. We'll pick it back up then. But after the break, we want to talk about some of the questions I know you have about the potential causes for these fires, what the investigations look like going forward, and so much more. We'll have that conversation for you in 2 minutes. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Well, let's get back into some of our coverage of the LA County wildfires there. A gorgeous nighttime view over the city of Angels. It's so resilient. It's been somewhat of a silver lining to see so many come out and support those in need. Our colleague, though, Fox News multimedia reporter Sarah Allegre, has this report on where we stand with the wildfire response. Let's listen.
I've gotten several phone calls saying there's a fire.
In fire-prone Los Angeles, calls for help can come often.
There's nothing else we can do. We're just trying to keep everything wet here.
Chuck Hart is a contractor by trade.
It's okay, it's okay, it's okay.
But Tuesday, he fought fire out of necessity. And while he's used to stepping up in his Pacific Palisades neighborhood,
I would have never thought that what I'm seeing right now would have yielded from the phone call that I got.
Ryan, can we get a little bit of water over here real quick?
Hart and his team of contractors tried to save what they could as hurricane-force winds tore through Pacific Palisades, like his mom's home, a beloved church, and generational memories. But resources were slim.
If we had water, like we had water, we were good. But if you don't, same thing up the street at the church. I got a video of us. Hoses are stretched. The apartment right behind the church.
We visited that church and ran into arborist Eli Johnson and his wife, Nicole.
It's really one day at a time.
They've got boots on the ground just days after losing their own home. Now doing what they can to help Chuck's team in a community they love. Cleaning roads, felling trees, and making a path for firefighters.
This is where my roots are, so just
you protect that.
Meanwhile, over 26,000 Californians are waiting for help from FEMA as hundreds of homes destroyed and families displaced.
That's what's going to make this whole thing come back, the quality of the people that live here. You have hardworking, civic-minded, service-minded people that are involved, whether there's a fire or not.
All right, Sarah Allegre there for Fox down on the ground in L.A. In the meantime here, we do want to continue the conversation, want to bring into the conversation there at the Washington Post, reporter Brianna Sachs. She's been down there on the ground for the last week detailing so much of the response there, and she joins us. Brianna, thanks for being with us here, and I know you're quite exhausted. You've been through a lot. You're from this area as well. Can you just give us a sense, where has your reporting taken you thus far? From what I understand, from what I've read, you are looking into the potential causes and the investigations into how this fire or these fires got started. What have you found?
Yeah, my reporting's taken me, it's been, I can't believe it's almost 7 days tomorrow, but I started on the Palisades fire. I got there a few hours after it started, and I spent the first few days really just documenting the sheer loss of the town and what people were going through. And then obviously always the cause of origin is top of mind in these types of disasters. So me and an amazing team at the Washington Post compiled visual evidence, interviews with witnesses, interviewed experts. I went up to the site where we believe the fire started after comparing some infrared imagery, and all this evidence, all these conversations with residents who were there point to a old fire that started on New Year's Eve, possibly rekindling in these very strong Santa Ana winds that we were experiencing. And that does happen when the roots or, things that didn't fully extinguish are just kind of smoldering, and the winds come and whip that up. So for the Palisades fire, that was the main theory that we have been exploring. And then over in Altadena, which is about 45 minutes away in the northeast part of Los Angeles, another very special community that got hit incredibly hard. Everyone's circling around SCE. That's a major utility in the area that services most of that community. And they have a large high voltage transmission tower that juts out into Eaton Canyon, where the fire started. Multiple residents documented incredible footage of the fire erupting under the transmission tower. And SCE has put out a statement saying they are investigating the equipment, but as of now, their grid didn't really show any faults. But there's kind of been a lot of conflicting reporting about whether power was on or off, and so it's something to unwind for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about power at the time. Is there a window when, say, red flag advisories go into effect, and for the utilities to assess whether or not they cut off power for a certain area? Is that the protocol?
It's a really tough program. We started doing this here in California in 2019 after the very deadly Woolsey, that was 2018. There was a spate of fires, but utilities started shutting off power in large regions when we get these massive Santa Ana winds or other dangerous conditions. And Southern California Edison came out immediately and said, hey, we shut off power immediately to the west of the canyon, where, that was very at risk. But I spoke to residents who have Southern California Edison as their utility, who said their power wasn't off. Other residents said their power was on. So it is tricky. Southern California Edison told me they had 120,000 people under the power shutoff program, I believe, before the fire. So it is something that will, I think, start to really come out once the investigations and all these lawsuits that are now hitting as those proceed.
Yeah, we were covering the lawsuits in the last hour.
Yeah,
a lot have been filed, a flurry of them have been filed against SoCal Edison from all different types of people, walks of life here, represented by lawyers, some pro bono even. Brianna, I wanted to ask too, the power question has been brought up in relation to the firefighting itself with the water in the hoses. Yes. Can you elucidate for us how those are related? Because we heard from, I believe, DPW saying essentially, just because the power's off doesn't mean the water's not running through the hoses.
Yeah, there actually was just another lawsuit filed a few hours earlier. The lead counsel of the Lakers actually lost his home, and so he's the lead plaintiff on this new lawsuit against LADWP for the water issues, alleging negligence and that the city failed to protect them because of all these water issues. And in our reporting, we found that both communities were experiencing water issues, Pacific Palisades and Altadena, when firefighters were showing up and they were putting in their hoses and nothing was coming out. And I spoke to residents who said they just watched firefighters have to stand there while their homes burn, which I just can't even imagine, both for a firefighter and for a resident. And what we were learning was that just the pressure was experiencing a lot of issues when all these people are trying to drain water out of the system at once at high power, that it just wasn't responding. So that's what we were learning, that it was a pressure issue, and that there was actually water in the hydrants. They just weren't able to get it out.
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of boggle the mind during something like this when you hear something like that. I want to talk about kind of another theory of the case here, arson. Can you help us make sense of some of the claims that have been put forth, some of the suspects even that have been taken into custody about the arson question? Are any of the investigations going on right now related to arson?
Not that I know of for the two major wildfires. Okay. I know that there was a suspect arrested in connection to, I think, the Kenneth fire, but that's still kind of been a little opaque on what the nature of the cause of that fire was. I think that was in the valley as well. There was police arrested another resident for trying to start, I think he was an unhoused person trying to start a fire in a park in LA. So from my understanding, the two major fires that we're focusing on, I mean, arson could be a potential. Investigators aren't saying anything, but that hasn't really come up. Both of those fires occurred in hillsides that are popular-ish hiking trails, but they are remote. So.
Yeah, we're watching some of the aerial footage from Skyfox earlier, and the level of destruction just really reels the mind. I mean, you can't even comprehend this. We've heard so many characterizations, like a bomb went off, these communities are wiped off the map. But you've seen it firsthand. You've seen it up close here. Any kind of personal stories of people that you have spoken with? I mean, how are they doing? How are they holding up? I mean, how do they see the next day, week, month?
Yeah, and I just want to put this out there for your viewers to understand that I spent the day with firefighters too, and all these issues there that are really painful to hear, such as the power of the water pressure and people complaining that firefighters weren't on the ground. All those things, they would have helped, but the way this fire lined up and the way that it moved, nothing really was going to stop this fire. Firefighters told me that this was the worst thing they had seen in 20 years. Wow. So it was just a catastrophic movement of fire that was going 20, 30 blocks ahead of in these densely urban areas. And just to witness that, people are just completely traumatized. And my dad lost his house in the Palisades fire, which we're still processing. Could never imagine that home burning. It's not close to nature whatsoever. The town is basically gone. There hadn't been a very serious fire there in a while. Altadena too was not super high fire risk. So it's just, in these situations, you just have to go day by day, and people, including my father, are just trying to focus on, what clothes do I need? And do I have my prescriptions? And where's this? Oh, it's burned. Where's that? Oh, it's burned. Wow. So it's just going to be a very strange reality for a lot of people for a long time.
Brianna, the preparation question has been talked about now for a week, almost ad nauseum. Were officials prepared for something of this magnitude? I mean, you alluded to the fact that this was literally man versus nature at the root cause of this. But But the preparation question is worth exploring, right?
Huge. Yeah. I mean, like, here's the reality is that fire in California is part of the ecosystem. The nature needs fire, and it will happen when we're in the way. So if we're not hardening homes, if we're not managing our fuels, these neighborhoods, like, a lot of people love to live where it's brushy. They love to live like nestled into the hillsides. So that comes with a risk. And it's a big question now on firefighter budgets. You know, the Forest Service has been crippled by budget cuts and cuts to firefighter staffing. And so when you just don't have the people or the money to staff all the positions you need to adequately fight a fire, there are consequences on top of building communities or not managing communities that are in wildlands.
You know, those firefighters you spoke with today, because we're on the precipice of yet another major Santa Ana wind event tomorrow and Wednesday. Red flag advisories, they're in effect right now as we speak here. Did you ask them about how much the fact that the aerial assets could not get up on Tuesday night, how much that contributed to the spread of the Palisades fire? And are they worried that the same conditions will present themselves tomorrow and they might not be able to get up into the air? Is that present right now?
I listened, at the Post, we listened to a lot of tape, and that was an immediate problem in the Palisades fire. You could hear it over the dispatch. Like, okay, hey, we're sending this. Okay, just kidding. We have to stand down. Like, we can't do that. So we saw that play out with another fire that started in Hollywood near the iconic Hollywood Bowl, and firefighters immediately were able to deploy air assets there, and they knocked that thing out so fast. So yes, the ability to air attack is massive. And when I was up today, there were wildland firefighters when the winds were favorable. They were taking helicopter after helicopter after helicopter, and they were dropping retardant over these really hard to reach areas in the mountains there. So they are prepping. I didn't specifically ask them about whether they will be able to fly the aircraft. I think a lot of the time that's like a moment to moment choice that they have to make.
All right, I think we're going to leave it at that. Brianna Sachs, thanks so much for your time and for your reporting, too. It's so valuable. We hope we can speak again in the next couple of days. Please get some rest if that's even possible. Brianna, thanks so much.